Clarification. Although this document is intended for use as an overview of the Prodigious Gigantomachy mythos, its production has applications to the overall encompassing nature of the My02cent franchise, and as such, this body of work, while intended to fit into the theme of Prodigious Gigantomachy mythos, transcends the Prodigious Gigantomachy mythos. The nature of the PWC Omniverse gives rise to the need to create a complex organizational structure for its mythos. Because Powers of Courage is a nonfiction built upon the foundation which can be subjectively treated as a work of fiction, the science of anthropology and taxonomy are applied in a stylized and creative way to produce the non-contradictory lore. Any story which deviates from its own rules will ultimately lose its audience in the process. If a concrete structure is put into place, these members of the audience will have sufficient information in the form of a stable backstory through which speculation and critical thinking can be applied to form a subjective relationship to maintain their interest and emotional attachment to the narrative. This is the foundation that this body of work has been built upon, because it is fun. Introduction. Be it religion or mythology, humanity has always tried to rationalize the beginning of the beginning. We are born from our mothers. We learn that our mothers have mothers. We experience the nature of childbirth through the animal kingdom. Ultimately, we grow to ask the question, what was the first parent? And more importantly, what was the first mother? Subjective answers to this question are treated as nonfiction and mythology. Objective answers to this question are treated as religion and spirituality, giving rise to the worship of gods and goddesses. The modern age will bring about the science, and the subjective question should be scrutinized. With the introduction of empirical evidence, concrete and abstraction would give rise to a deeper comprehension of subjective and objectivity. There would be a polarizing division between faith and understanding. Ignorance is an inherent aspect of humanity. It is a product of spectrum which gives rise to sentient sapient comprehension. The mind has a nature of reasoning and understanding at the moment of its conception, which can be defined in levels of comprehension, whereas comprehension is a spectrum of perception, awareness, and reasoning. Perception and awareness are objective aspects of interface between the mind and the body. Reasoning is inherently an objective aspect of the mind, giving rise to the mind, but reasoning is an inherent property of the physical brain. The brain is the organ within entities, specifically organic entities, that facilitate the presence of mind. The relationship between the brain and the mind, at best, is subjective. The brain can objectively exist without the presence of the mind, but there is little to no objective empirical evidence that the mind can exist without the brain. This is subjective, of course. Humanity has created mind with our brains. There is an entire field of scientific discipline built on the foundation of mind outside of organic brain. Humanity calls this field computer science. Furthermore, computer science is built exclusively on the fundamental properties of mathematics, which is another field of science. While mathematics as a discipline of science is treated indirectly as a subjective principle, it has a nature which is purely objective. It can be argued that math is the mind of computers, and that the hardware of computers is the physical manifestation of objective brain, giving the discipline of mathematics the quality and properties of the physical brain. The complexity of computer science will ultimately lead to the subjective capacity for machines to emulate humanity to such a degree as to call into question the objective nature of humanity's nature of sentient sapience. Furthermore, transcending humanity's uniqueness among the animal kingdom as a xenocognition. The term prosimian and simian is used to describe the complexity of intelligence within the primate, which are the most intelligent members of the animal kingdom. The term prosimian and sapien is used to describe the complexity of intelligence within the hominid, to include the extinct members of the Homo sapien lineage of sentient members of the animal kingdom. There is a distinction made between animal intelligence and human intelligence. We call this distinction humanity. The term nigger was invented as an intermediary terminology. Its function was to serve as a property of animal husbandry within the science of agriculture. To be an animal was to be less than human. To be a human was to be treated greater than an animal. The true unspoken nature of nigger was to objectively define an animal with all the attributes of a human, while subjectively declaring sufficient objective evidence to subject the nigger to the quality of life intended for the animal. Humanity as a sentient species knows that while animals may not embody humanity, the animal lack of humanity does not infringe upon the capacity for animals to subjectively experience the same quality of life that humans experience. In fact, the objective practice of this is called a pet. When humans take ownership over an animal and choose to treat that animal like a human, humans subject that animal to the ideology of pet. As a byproduct, the animal is not allowed to function within its nature as an animal, but must assimilate as best it can within the kind to the quality of being a human. Humanity calls this being humane. Humans assert that animals being less than human are incapable of knowing what it is to be humane, giving rise to their lack of humanity. The practice of animal husbandry, which reduces the nature of livestock to below that of pet, gives rise to not just the lack of humane treatment, but the discipline of inhumane treatment. Nature describes predators eating prey. In kind, humans view themselves as the apex predator within the animal kingdom. All principles of nature were less than human and thus lack humanity, further enforcing this sentient sapient line of thinking. Furthermore, humanity has accepted that to be human is to have humanity and thus imply human treatment. The quality of humanity does not infringe on the capacity for humans to subjectively experience the same quality of life that animals experience. Within the human nomenclature, there is no autonomy for humane or humanity. While there is no autonomy for the state of being humane as a verb, cruel and or inhumane, whereas inhumane is defined as without compassion for misery or suffering cruelly. The quality of humane is embodied within being human. A human is humane and has humanity. Thus, an animal is animalistic and has no humanity. The semantic antonym of humane is animalistic. Thus, humans can be treated or subjected to animalistic treatment, being less than human. Bringing us back to the quality of the nigger. The nigger is a sentient sapient human subject to animalistic treatment, and kind to how a pet is allowed to be treated with humanity. A nigger is allowed to be treated animalistic, and as such becomes subjected to inhumane treatment. It is the objective quality of a sentient sapient entity being reduced to and subjected to the quality of being, which is sufficiently lower than their true inherent nature, that defines the institution of the nigger. Synonymous to the pet, agricultural and social science gives rise to the nigger. While this is ethically and morally one of the deepest and most disturbing qualities of the sentient sapient human hominid, and by proxy a fundamental principle of the nature of mind and body, it has also given rise to the spectrum of sentient sapience. It can be argued that the capacity for entities to be inhumane defines them as being inhumane, but it also can be argued that the state of being subjected to inhumane animalistic states of being and quasi life for several generations has little to no influential effect on the nature of humanity, whereas the mind is robbed of its sapience. The sentience of the nigger remains as an inherent quality of its being, to be further inherited by offspring of the future generations. Humanity, by further extinction sentience, can function within the animal kingdom, and by extinction within an animalistic nature, without embodying the qualities of being inherently animalistic. In the same context as to no matter how humane a hominid might treat a pet, the animalistic nature of the pet will remain, and without the animal embodying the quality of becoming inherently humane. With humanity established as the highest order of intelligence, being the apex predator, the influence of the primordial tendency of the prosapient nature within humanity gives rise to a social hierarchy. What is best for any group of social species should be defined as a principle of humanity. That is to say that social species operate with the best interests of their collective whole in mind. This should serve as the natural definition of the quality of being humane. We established that the extension of humane treatment to animals by humans gives rise to pet. This view alone should serve as sufficient data to state that humanity is not an exclusively humane quality. It can be argued that humanity is an exclusive sentient sapient trait, but this would imply that all social species are members of the sentient sapiens, and thus have sentient sapient levels of intelligence, either elevating their position in the animal kingdom, or reducing humanity's position in the animal kingdom, or eliminating the subjective nomenclature of what is implied by sentience altogether. Without diving too deep into the context of this rationalization, we can say that social species do in fact give rise to social science, and are governed within its principles. In doing this, we have established the basis upon which the body of work draws its units of comprehension from. It was important to establish these qualities of intelligence and natural nature of being. To continue further with this body of work, taxonomy is a science of heredity. Mothers give birth and are maternal parents. Fathers seminate and is the parental parent. In this way, conception is the action of conceiving a child or of a child being conceived, whereas conceiving means to become pregnant with a child. This is how most organic biological entities known as organisms reproduce. Taxonomy is built upon the organization of this method of physical diversity. The parent-child relationship is perfect for organic taxonomy, but creators create creations. Every creation has a creator, but not every creation is a creator. This is used to refer to entities which are titled as gods and goddesses. Primordial entities manifest themselves in much the same way as asexually reproducing organic cells treat themselves. A self-manifesting entity has a state of non-being which gives rise to a state of being. It still operates within the nature of being a creation which was created. and having a nature as a creation that was created by a creator. Lastly, builders and engineers build. They are still creators. Most creators are defined as manifesting from an unknown source. Builders and engineers transmute, taking one kind and producing another kind, often deviating from their own inherent nature, as well as natures of the aggregate used in the process, to create a new kind. These are the primary ways by which entities are formed. Within the Power of the Courage Omniverse, the Prodigious Gigantomachy is the highest order of primordial aborigines. However, the nature and quality of giants transcend the Power of the Courage Omniverse. The order of giants, by definition alone, predates the Mother Goddess. While considered a taboo, there is an entire field within the taxonomy that asserts this absolute truth. Many of the natives have origins that are defined as being primordial. In essence, to be a native in the Mother Goddess system is to be a primordial, predating the very existence in of itself. It is well known that the Mother Goddess destroyed naturally occurring existence, then recreated it, giving herself infinite immortality with infinite experiences. The highest order of this taxonomy is defined by the duality which exists between the natives and the illusion. The natives view themselves as being inherently objectively real, having the highest transcendent nature of sentient sapience, thus forming the foundation of humanity within the Goddess Mother system. By the will of the Mother Goddess, members of the illusion have been reduced to the quality of being chattel property. While their existence or labor is not objectively forced labor, the inherent quality of their nature in existence is to serve as the medium out of which the natives can sustain their immortality. The entities within the illusion perceive themselves as having the highest sentient sapience, whereas the transcendent natives perceive the members of the illusion as being animalistic chattel at best.